Joining us at What the Heck is Happening in HR is Bernie Currie, a SHRM-CP and a PHR. He's a seasoned HR professional and a military advocate. He is dedicated to restoring authenticity and humanity in workplaces through genuine conversations, which is what we're going to have. We have a wonderful three-part series here with Bernie. He's dual certified. His career spans various industries, including healthcare and information technology. He has been awarded just recently the Tampa Bay Business and Wealth Magazine's Chief HR Award winner. He serves as president-elect for SHRM's Suncoast HR chapter and is chair of the Department of Defense's Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve in Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco counties. As an Air Force veteran with two combat veteran sons, Bernie is known for his ongoing support of our military population, has been instrumental in the creation of SHRM's Veterans at Work and Military at Work programs, and serves as a SHRM veteran ambassador. He enjoys traveling, staying relevant on these amazing issues that face all of us by having those difficult social conversations. He is supported by his bride of over 35 years, along with his 3 children and 5 grandchildren. We welcome Bernie Currie to What the Heck is Happening in HR. For our podcast disclaimer, please visit the episode description. Thanks for coming back to What the Heck is Happening in HR. And today we've got Bernie Currie, and he is here to chat with us about veterans. Welcome, Bernie.
Good morning, everybody. What a pleasure it is to be with you today.
So I am thrilled to have you on. And as everyone heard from your bio, I'm just glad you had the time to even talk with us. And I really appreciate it. But I think it's also important for people to understand why you make time for something like this. So, can you share a bit of your personal why around this focus on veterans and workforce development? And I know, and we thank you for your service, but there's more to that story than just your service, right?
What a great question. I think it does stem from many years ago. I think I know that less than 1% of our U.S. population ever raises their right hand to join the military. And I was fortunate enough to make that decision as a 17-year-old. And my mother actually had to sign me up, if you
Oh,
will. I've always had a passion for the military. I've always wanted to be a part of the military. And in my latter years after leaving the military, I've always just wanted to give back to the greatest country on the planet. And with my boy joining the Army many, many years ago with 2 deployments, I think it's just my desire to continue the effort, see what we can do in order to strengthen the gap between the civilian population as well as the military population. So there's a number of reasons, but that kind of brings me to where I am today.
and tell me what that gap is.
Well, one of the most significant things for our civilian employers to know is that the Department of Defense doesn't train our those who serve to leave the military. There's a required transition assistance program that is mandated for those who are uh, scheduled to leave the military. So they're pouring their time, effort, and energy into, and resources for that matter, into training and mobilizing individuals to protect our country globally. And so the gap is there is a military structure. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, for example, is a legal system within the military, whereas the civilian community has slightly different structure. Our workplaces, while a lot of the job duties are transferable through military occupation specialty translation websites, a lot of our civilians who may not have a military background really don't know the skill set of those that serve. And
Mhm.
so we've come a long way in the last 10 to 15 years specifically with skills translation, taking those essential functions, the knowledge, skills, and abilities that those that serve have, and being able to translate that language into civilian language so that when the resumes are coming across our desk, we're able to understand a little bit more about what they do.
So, are there stats? I mean, do we know how easy or how hard is it for veterans to be part of that applicant pool?
Well, we know that there are 200,000, in excess of 200,000 individuals who leave the military every single year. And let's talk military spouses for just a minute. The unemployment rate among military spouses is right around 24%.
Wow.
So there is a applicant pool that is no doubt available for those that are wanting to enter the job market for whatever reason in the civilian sector. What I like to, the illustration that I like to use is if someone were to be in the business community for 20 years, maybe they'd risen to a director or VP level, they had a master's degree, and they were relatively successful. And they decide, one day, I think I want to be a battalion commander in the Army. Well, it doesn't work that easily.
Mm,
Now, can you pass the military entrance exam? Can you pass the physical exam? I mean, there's a number of steps in order to get in the military, and the chances of a person being a battalion commander is zero
mhm.
because there is a number of steps and requirements that are needed to go through the ranks of the military structure. So, what we do within the SHRM community, that's the Society for Human Resource Management, is that we pull through a plethora of resources available to the HR practitioner who doesn't have any military experience. And through the Veterans at Work certificate program, soon to be military at work program, there's also a Veterans Ambassador program where the HR practitioner can understand the military structure better so that when the resumes do come across their desk or in the applicant training system, they're able to better vet those that are coming through looking for a job.
And be able to understand what that means, because of their own personal education around it.
Correct.
I guess we just need to make sure the supervisors and hiring managers get some of that as well.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a very important point. There's an educational need both on the military side as well as the civilian side.
Mhm.
And I encourage my colleagues in the world of HR, hey, you have to become more educated at the military. Don't leave it up to the military to educate you. Really become familiar with, what is a lieutenant? What are their responsibilities, right?
Mhm.
What is a mechanic on a F-35, right? And there are some transferable skills that are no doubt, uh, again, transferable into the civilian world. But I think both entities need to educate themselves. And I specifically will tell a soldier, airman, Coast Guardsman, etc., hey, when you're going in for the interview, use that as an opportunity to educate the employer
Mm.
about your job and your
Mhm.
experience and what your background is. Whether you get the job or not, it's important to be able to educate the employers on what it's like a day in the life of those who may do what you do in your particular occupation.
Mhm. Reminds me, my dad always said, "We always should leave a place better than we found it." And that's what would happen, right? And they would educate and leave the place better than they found it. So, tell us the special sauce. Tell us the why for hiring a veteran. Tell us, what is it that will differentiate that targeted source of hires? We are patriotic, we believe in it, but how do we sell it to our management team that this is a group of people who would be great for us? What is it?
Well, there's a number of factors here that I would want to present. Number one, I'd like to take two directions here. One, as an individual, me personally, what are some of the reasons why I as an individual as well as an HR practitioner would want to hire a veteran or a military spouse. And then the second thing is that what are some business practices or best practices on why you should? So first off, for me, it's really to honor the sacrifice that they've made for their country. I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, less than 1% raised their hand, right? And these are individuals who took, 4 years or longer of their life. And there are sacrifices that go with that. Another reason I have is a desire to give back and a commitment to know more about the military structure and the military veteran. I mentioned earlier, 200,000 people are leaving the military every year.
Mm.
Well, it's a great way to meet the needs of a growing military separation. That number is getting larger. And also to strengthen transition efforts, getting in the mix to be able to make a difference and help those that have served really find placement outside of the wire, if you will. And then to promote the military within the workplace. I think it's very important to be able to bring that military sense within our employment workplaces. And then a couple of other reasons outside of myself is a very strong work ethic comes with a veteran. Their adaptability alone, not
Mhm.
just on a local level, but a global perspective, being in situations where they've had to adapt with technical skills, as well as leadership skills and the integrity that they've had to exude as they work their way up the chain in promotions, not to mention training and development that
Mhm.
goes on within the military structure. um, Also, their global perspective, their diversity and inclusion and equity, just the experiences that they've gone through across the globe, and not to mention, and I know we say this often, but I don't really understand why we don't really spend more time on it. Is they've learned to work within a team very well.
Mm.
And my caveat is not every veteran is perfect and great and excellent. There are some situations where the military just wasn't for certain individuals, and that's okay. But overall, I would just say some of those areas, not to mention as an employer, there's some government incentives, tax credits, transition program opportunities like Skill Bridge, and Four Block is another one, not to mention time management. So those are just a few areas from my perspective.
Yeah, and I think one that always stuck with me was the responsibility of equipment and budgets,
Right.
that they're huge, and many times it's just overlooked, I think, in the private sector, and knowing that they had to have the um, wherewithal for the people, but also for all the equipment and the logistics needed for that.
Absolutely.
I just had a new appreciation for all of that than I ever had. I got that fortunately very early when I was working with the Pentagon. Let's just talk for a moment here because you've laid out such a great reasons, and I think you've given things that HR folks can go to the management team and be able to help. But I also want to help the HR person, and maybe for themselves or maybe for the leadership team, to talk about what some of those biases are that pop up, because those are the things that are going to be going through the mind of them. So, as an example, I had a client who said to me, "Well, I'm not hiring a vet, Kelly." I had never had that happen. Maybe I had it and didn't recognize it, but never vocally to me. And I said, What's going on?" She's like, "Oh, no, they all have PTSD." And I said, "Well, no." And you don't know that. And
Right.
you don't know what else for everybody else. I mean, you're really putting in sensationalism into an incredible applicant pool. What other biases do we see sometimes?
One of the things that I've learned in my time in the civilian sector is there are experiences that people may have had with the military, either while they were in or while they had a family member or loved one be involved in the military, that were not positive at all.
Mhm.
And so their opinion of the military may be skewed based on the experiences that they have seen and been personally made aware of. And so I think oftentimes in our lives, situations happen where we can see a situation like that happen, and it puts an automatic shield up in us. And I would just encourage everybody to consider being vulnerable again.
Mhm.
Guarded vulnerability goes a long way.
Mhm.
And so when it comes to PTSD, one of the most fascinating TED Talks I saw recently was by Sebastian Junger, and that's with a J, Sebastian Junger. He talked about the mystery and the myth surrounding the disabled, uh, PTSD, among others. And it's a very interesting study where in Israel, for example, less than 1% of the population consider themselves disabled related specifically to PTSD, yet everyone in Israel has to sign up for the military.
Mhm.
Whereas in America, less than 10% of those who put on a uniform actually see combat, yet our PTSD and disability rates are over 50%. So,
Wow.
why is that?
Mm.
And I believe, as an HR practitioner, as Sebastian does, is we haven't done a good enough job of reintegrating those who have served into our workplaces through, let's say, ERGs, employee readiness groups, affinity groups, et cetera, where there are veterans within our workplaces who want to talk to each other.
Mm.
And why not bring that opportunity together? So, the other thing I want to mention on the bias side is oftentimes our biases may come because of what we don't know or
Mhm.
we assume
Mhm.
or our perception of. And it goes back to our earlier conversation about education. Becoming more educated about the military structure is something that I think it's a charge for all of us. And one of the things I appreciate Dr. Wayne Taylor and Dr. Renee Amboy at the USF Office of Veteran Services and all that they do on an ongoing basis at USF is that they're continuing that education conversation to address the biases head on. So a great shout out to Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's important to say them aloud because sometimes we don't even think, well, that's those are other people. But then when you hear it, you can say, well, wait a minute, that crossed my mind as well. So maybe I need to get that in check.
Absolutely.